evening. Welcome to the 308th edition of Talk of the Town. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Ken Bukes. You know that anyways. What I'd like to do is I'd like to thank my wife for putting this show together tonight, and I'm sorry that she's not here, but anyways, you'll enjoy this. I'm sure you will. First off, I want to thank our underwriters. We got a great group of underwriters. We're going to start off with David and Kevin Gallerani, Cape Auto Body and Service, located on 2 locations, Somerset Street and Sandwich Street in beautiful downtown Plymouth. Next up, we have Wrestling Brewster, Brewster PC Solutions. He's got a new saying. I can't remember what it is, so I'll go with the old one. Training simplified. And I can't remember the rest, wrestling, I'm sorry. Next up, we have One Stop Painting with Jeff Cohen. How are you, Jeff? We have attorney Trifletti and Costa on Long Pond Road. Hi, Stephen. Hi, Ellen. And then we have Seeley's Hair Salon in beautiful downtown Manomet, right next door to a shout-out, Cindy's Metro, down the street from another shout-out called Geller's. Hi, Susie. You can follow us on Twitter. Our guests do, and we follow them. You can also find us on Facebook at Talk of the Town. Click like. See you like the show. You'll be able to catch all the updates. Now that I have my edit suite back, I'll be updating the site. You can also participate in this program by dialing the phone number 508-830-3971 early and often. We've got a great guest. We have 2 great guests here tonight, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy this program. But next up, I have to plug something. So I want to talk about the Lions Club. We have a great function coming up real soon. It is the Thirsty Pilgrim. It's going to be down at the Hedge House on the waterfront on September 7th and 8th. If you were to purchase this Lions mug, it will get you 2 days of admission to the Thirsty Pilgrim, and it will entitle you to your free samples of beer. All of money, by the way, it's a 501c3, so the money comes right back into the community, goes to iResearch. The Lions do a lot of great things for the community. I'm very proud to say that I am a Lion along with my wife, Karen. So spend the $20 and buy this mug. You can either contact either Karen or myself or any one of the other Lions and purchase this mug, and the money will go to a worthy cause. And on that, I'm going to get off my soapbox, and we're going to get into the program. We have 2 guests that are returning. One of them is returning. The other is first time being on Talk of the Town. And they come from the Manomet Center for Conservation Sciences in beautiful downtown Manomet. They have just come back one has come back from the Arctic, the other has just come back from Alaska. I want you to welcome Talk of the Town's 2 guests, Brad Winn and Ian Davies. Gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight.
Great to be here again, Ken.
Love having you here. It's always interesting. You have great information. Karen and I are both bird lovers, and a lot of the people that watch this program are bird lovers.
Terrific.
And you guys have some really great things that you want to talk about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be quiet.
Okay.
And occasionally interrupt you.
Sure.
But why don't you tell our viewers what the both of you have been up to since you've been here the last time?
Sure, yeah. We've been working in Arctic Alaska and Arctic Canada on some research this summer, and we've just gotten back. Ian's been back about a week or so from Alaska, and what we wanted to do is talk about not only the work we were doing up there, but also talk about Manomet a little bit, and about the birds particularly that we've been studying, and kind of a life history of those birds, and tie it all into to the Plymouth area and to Plymouth Beach, and talk about some of the issues that these birds are facing on their long migrations.
I want you to talk about the wonderful facility you have tucked away up on the cliff there. It's a wonderful ride. I love going by there because even as I ride through, to me it's the woods, but as I ride through there, a lot of birds actually just cross over, and I see some really beautiful species of birds and some wonderful songbirds. And I know that we're not going to be dealing with specifically songbirds tonight, but I'd like you to talk about the observatory or Conservation Science Center.
Sure.
And I'd like you to talk about that and what it is that we in the community can do to help this 501c3 along its merry way and continue this great service that you provide to actually the world. So why don't you...
Sure, what a great introduction. And
well, thank you.
The birds that you saw there actually drew the attention of some folks back in the late 60s, and they decided to start a banding program there with the land birds, the songbirds you mentioned. And the land birds was a great place to start long-term work, and it's continuing. So, you know, in 1969, Manomet was founded as a nonprofit, as you indicated. 501c3, and it continues today, and it's become one of the not only the longest or the oldest, most well-established conservation organization in New England. But we have work going on from, as we're going to talk about tonight, high Arctic areas all the way down into southern South America now, all linked together by shorebirds and the migratory routes they take. And we're working hard with many partners to see what we can do to maintain many of those species that have been declining over the years. So we can talk a little bit about the landbird program. I think Steve might have had a question about the landbird program.
Steve would like to talk to you about landbirds.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know when you think that do you want that question now?
Sure, we'll roll with that.
Stevie, why don't you come on over here and yell kind of loud so people can hear you?
First of all, I want to thank you guys for being here again. I was really impressed with you the last time you were on. And the two questions I have is, actually I have two. It was several years ago I went to the South Shore Observatory, and I watched them, and it had these nets were set up to catch the birds, and so they could tag them. And the other question, and do you do the same here, and you know, and your trapping of birds? And the other question I have is, because of global warming, do we have more species now, or different species of birds that we had before? And I'll let you guys answer, and I'll listen. Thank you.
Sure, really good questions. And I guess I should say that many people locally know Manomet as the Manomet Bird Observatory, still MBO, and it has evolved and changed and brought in many other programs besides just birds right now. Some really interesting things, and you can any of your viewers can go to manomet.org and see all the conservation projects we have going on. There's some really interesting things that are evolving there.
Is that how also they can find out about how they can help the organization with financial contribution?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Manomet.org, and then all the programs are listed individually, and you can go to the programs that you're most interested in and find out how to get in touch with us. And certainly contributions are a big part of what we do, and we use them frequently to match other grants that we get. So private dollars are very important to Manomet.
You do a great job over there. There we go.
So the netting's still going on. The landbird netting is still going on, and I think that Ian, I'm going to ask him to really fill in, because he started at a young age at Manomet, and has emerged now as being a really kind of a up and coming great bird resource. So let Ian talk about his beginnings at Manomet. At what age were you?
I started there when I was 12.
Okay, there you go.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I was into nature pretty much my whole childhood, and I happened to live about a mile away from the bird observatory. And one day I just decided to go over and check it out, heard about it from some friends, and I went and observed the landbird banding process, and I just basically fell in love with it. And now, ever since then, I volunteered for a few years. Then I worked for them at Manomet for 2 or 3 years. And now for 2 summers, I've been lucky enough to go up to Arctic Canada and do the sort of work that we'll be talking more about.
It must be fascinating to do that.
It's
One of the
amazing.
photos that they're going to see at home in a little while is, I like how you really get into your work. You get down there on the ground with that camera.
Oh yeah,
Gotta give it all.
superb photographer. Yeah. So he and I both have photos tonight. We're going to share with you, and we'll tell some short stories as we go along to make things interesting. But we both had, even though we're many miles apart, had some similar experiences in both the eastern part of. It's actually Hudson Bay. I was up in the north end of Hudson Bay in Canada on a small island. But let's talk about landbirds a little bit first. What you were mentioning, and Steve was wondering about netting, and we do things differently in the Arctic. We'll get to that in a minute. So
Okay.
different group of birds.
I'll follow your lead. Go for
Okay,
it.
they're a different group of birds altogether, but we can talk a little bit about, touch about what goes on. You want to talk a little bit about banding landbirds at Manomet?
So for the landbirds, we use a kind of net called a mist net, which is the sort of net that Stevie was talking about seeing many years ago. And so those kind of nets are the sort of thing that we catch the landbirds with. And that's the best way to catch these migrant birds that are moving through the forest. But when we're up on the tundra in the Arctic, there's a whole different kind of suite of birds that we're going for. And so we have to use different methodologies instead of the mist nets, which are basically 40-foot long nets that you just hang passively in the woods. We use what are called bow nets to gently capture the birds when they're on the nests, and that is how we band them up there.
We could talk a little bit about the different migratory strategies between landbirds and then the shorebirds we're going to be talking a lot more about, and they're very different, and they're important different strategies on how the birds are moving from southern wintering grounds to northern nesting areas. And with the landbirds, a lot of them are actually coming up into New England and through southern Canada that come through here on the way north. So Manomet works in the spring as the birds are filtering north,
Right.
and then on the way south too, and measuring the numbers of birds, the different species of birds as they come through, and banding them, and frequently getting recaptures of some of those birds that were banded in previous years. And there are other people doing similar things with these landbirds. But with landbirds, they migrate usually steadily with very short jumps. So they're
Right.
and much of it happens at night. So during the day, they're feeding in a forest plot somewhere, for instance, and then they will migrate at night some distance, and then they'll stop again, and they'll forage, and so they're refueling themselves all along the way. Shorebirds. And much of the work that's been discovered about shorebirds started with some of the first Manomet biologists. But shorebirds are long hop migrants, so they fuel up at a place, let's say northern coast of South America.
Okay.
They put on a lot of weight, fueling up with rich foods, usually associated with wetlands. Coastal wetlands are very important to shorebirds. And they fuel up, they put on a lot of weight, they build muscle mass for flying, and then they blast off and they go long distances and they burn a lot of the fat that they've gained during the fueling time, and then they land again in a place that they know from past experience is a rich place for them to find lots of the critters they eat. and they'll refuel again, and then they go another long hop. And we'll show you some of the hops these birds are taking, and it's very impressive. I touched upon some of those last time I was here.
The last time you were here, you had a fascinating migratory, you had a picture of the globe and the migration of species of birds and how they just seem to follow the same course.
That was a bird called a whimbrel, which is a kind of shorebird,
yes,
whimbrel.
right.
Yeah. And we actually have satellite tags on the whimbrels. We're going to be talking about two species. We'll get to that in a little while, but that have a little bit different migratory paths, doing similar Arctic flights. But we'll talk about some of the differences there. But finishing up with the land birds. Do you want to talk about some of the things that Trevor and you and others have found out as far as some of the potential climate change scenarios are with birds that are migrating from the northern part of the range, having a different trigger from those that are in the southern? You want to talk about those?
So one of the wonderful things that Manomet has been able to do over these past 40 plus years is get a really long-term data set over the populations of birds that are migrating through the area. So there are, I believe, over 450,000 individual birds that have been captured in the time that Manomet has existed there.
And
that's just land birds.
That
is a lot of birds.
Wow.
So by having such a large number of birds over this really long period of time, you can tell when there are changes in the populations. So whether numbers are declining, whether they're increasing, or if there are changes in the timing of the birds. So if they're coming back earlier from their wintering grounds, or if they're leaving their breeding grounds earlier. Wow. So as a result of this long data set, we can tell that depending on where the species is spending its winters, if they're spending their winters in kind of the southern U.S. and northern Central America area, they are responding more strongly to climate change than if they're going all the way to South America. So because of a warming climate, these birds are being triggered by warmer temperatures and coming back up to, I believe it's 8 or 9 days earlier in some species.
In that time frame from the beginning of Manomet's work to now, yeah.
In only the space of a few decades, the changing climate of our world is causing these birds to come back an entire week earlier, which might not seem like it could have much of an effect, but some of these birds have food sources that they're tied to very specifically. So say the emergence of a certain caterpillar might always happen in the second week of May. And if these birds rely on that, now they're coming back in the first week of May, there could be some very serious consequences.
And so the second group of birds that go, these are the land birds again, that go down into the deeper tropics, closer to the equator. They don't have, they're warm, they have an even temperature all the time. And so you want to talk about that a little bit?
So these birds that are going all the way down, like Brad said, to the equator, they're not feeling the changes that climate changes and global warming are causing, and so they aren't showing any difference really. There's almost no difference in their migration time over the past 40 years.
So their timing coming up through here to Plymouth and Manomet has been the same. That's really interesting.
I've noticed it, and we will move on soon. But I just wanted, it brought to mind when you're leading me to believe, and I do believe they're habitual. They have their habits. They're creatures of habit, and they seem to follow the same migratory patterns. But another thing I've noticed with the birds that are going through my yard. We have one bird that'll show up on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday, and he'll sit in the same arbor, and he'll look at the house and he'll sing songs, and he goes away, and you won't see him for 2 more days. And he comes back, and he always sits in the same place, and I have never seen him on a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Saturday or a Sunday. So, but
we'll have to tag that bird and find out where he's going on those other days.
Yeah, we need to know because he's a beautiful songbird, and I never realized until conversation with you that birds fly at night. I always thought, well, you and I lay our heads down and go to sleep at night. I always thought a bird laid in the nest and went to sleep at night, and I found out that my hummingbirds are flying all night long. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, really?
Yeah.
So, anyways, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
No,
go
not
off.
at all. That's a nice story. Sure. Yeah. So what we would like to move to is talk to you about a whole different group. Now that we've laid the groundwork, the birds that you saw when you drive up in the Manomet area, those are the land birds. We want to talk about shorebirds, and specifically sandpipers and plovers.
And I want you to talk about the birds that set my Twitter account on fire, because I was getting tweets from, it was either you or one of your associates about some big finds that you were coming up with. So
sure.
if you want to head down that road, fine. I'm content to listen to what you have to say, because I'm fascinated by this subject.
Super. I'm glad we got some tweets going for you.
Yes.
So